It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for keeping it locked. We've had a lot of light fun this morning. Now let's get serious for a moment. Mental illness or mental health disorders have not always been the most understood illnesses. Even now, with as much as we know, we still know very little. Now, a few examples of mental illnesses that we might know include depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar mood disorder, schizophrenia, eating disorders, and addictive behaviors.
So this morning we want to unpack, and we are very, very honored to be joined by Dr. Samke J. Nkhobo, a medical doctor, author, philanthropist, and professional speaker with bipolar disorder, to help us unpack this all-important topic. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us so early this morning. We really appreciate having you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Doctor, I'm going to start with, it might feel like a bit of a cheeky question in light of what we are talking about, but I feel that we have to get rid of any stigmas and we've got to get serious and honest about this. But I've also found it's vitally important after the last 2 years that we've all experienced collectively to ask this. Are you okay? How are you doing, Doctor?
I'm doing better currently. I'm in a good place currently. So it's been tough, but right now things are going well.
Good.
You know what I liked about that question is that you gave it some context, you gave it a timeline as well, and I think that is also the humility in our circumstances, the fact that we can have that timeline and say, you know what, right now I am doing well, thank you, because I think that's the human in us. We have to have that humility as well. But just to start off, it's a very complex topic, and I think we'll take hours to break it down properly, but just for anybody who would like an explanation as to what a mental illness is, can you just categorize that for us?
Sure, no problem. So a mental illness is a group of disorders that impair your perception, your thoughts, your emotions, and also affect your behavior as well. So for it to be called a mental illness, it has to impact your social life, occupational life, meaning your employment and functioning in that regard, and also affect your family relationships.
All right, I'm a firm believer that we all sit on a scale. As much as we'd love to define this and put it in a pretty little box, it doesn't work that way. But I know that we have identified some more common, and I would imagine even more pronounced now after what we've experienced through COVID. But maybe you can highlight some of the more common mental illnesses that people are more likely to be diagnosed with.
The more common conditions include depression. Depression affects 264 million people globally.
Wow.
And is one of the most debilitating conditions that we have around in the world, basically. The other one includes anxiety disorder and also including substance disorders as well.
So I think that it's important for us to recognize, I mean, as friends and as family members, I mean, what are some of the signs that a person may exhibit should they have a mental illness that is possibly not diagnosed or receiving the proper treatment? How do we go about seeing exactly what we can see in terms of somebody's behavior? Are there any red flags, warning signs that could prompt us to help?
So it would depend on what condition they have. So if they have, for example, a mood disorder such as depression or bipolar, they will have very low mood. They might express suicidal ideations. They may have elevated mood irritability, or their neurovegetative features might be impacted in the sense that they might be sleeping excessively or not sleeping enough. They may have very excessive appetite or not be eating enough. So the other factor is that their concentration may be impaired as well. If they have a psychotic disorder, they may be delusional in that sense or have disorganized behavior, or experiencing palpitations that may be unusual from the norm.
I mean, I've had panic attacks very close to me, and it's serious, serious business when you're caught or locked in that space.
Yes.
There have been a couple of really tragic, high-profile cases of suicide where on the face of it, you would look at that person's life and you'd think they have it all. They're getting major contracts, they're loved, they've got public notoriety. And you think to yourself, what could cause a person to go to that extreme? What are the root causes of mental illness? Is it a predisposition? Is it genetic? Is it situational or somewhere in between? What drives mental illness?
So it's a biopsychosocial model, which includes the genetic factors. They do play a role. So with the genetic factors, for example, if both my parents have experienced severe depression, versus somebody who does not have it. That person who has family members who have it would have a higher risk of it, for example. And then also the psychological factors play a role. So if somebody is in a high-risk psychological environment that is exposing them to, depression or anxiety or any other mental illness, they would also be at risk of developing a mental illness as well. So it's a biopsychosocial model which impacts the person in various ways, and substance use plays a role as well.
Yeah, and we can also throw COVID into the mix.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of external factors. I think that humanity has changed a lot, and the stimulus has always changed, and we have to be very cognizant about that and be there for each other. Doctor, we'll definitely need your services a little bit later as we further unpack this. And if you have any family members who you feel that could use a watch of your Feel Good Breakfast Show with our professional, then please get them around. And of course, if you need any assistance, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, you can call them on this particular number, 011 23 44 837, or you can visit their website, that is sadag, as in sadag.org.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Thank you so much for keeping it locked as we continue a vitally important conversation, certainly underpinned by the recent passing of South African musician Ricky Rick. Tragically so, this is a harsh reminder as to how important mental health and us maintaining our watch on ourselves actually is. We've still got the incredible Dr. Sampie Ngobo with us via video call. She is going to share a little bit of her knowledge around mental health and a bit of her own story as well. Doc, thank you so much for sticking around. I'm going to jump right in, and obviously a very dark period in the South African entertainment industry's history. Many people just don't understand the extremely dark place that a person must go to actually take their own life. Why is suicide so prevalent in people with mental illness? What allows a person to cross that line?
Yeah, you're correct in saying that it's been a very sobering time for us, and
Sure.
very devastating as well, and traumatic. So mental illness is definitely a risk factor for suicide, and one of the factors that plays a role is if the illness itself is not well controlled for whatever reason. Could be because the treatment is not managed well for the patient, but also because they're overwhelmed by whatever situation they're faced with. And also, if it's an impulsive kind of an act where people feel that there's no way out, that's also another reason why a patient would end their life.
You know, Doctor, when I look at South Africa as a whole, we also have a cultural problem, especially in men.
Yeah.
In terms of opening up.
Vulnerability.
And
yeah.
saying, I'm actually not okay. I have this problem. Because there's this predisposition for us to always be strong and have it together. And I think it's a massive thing that we have to really squeeze out of society and start normalizing things like, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I am not getting through this well. I am feeling weak. Those are the words that we need to actually get to in order for us to open and create these bridges so that we can get help to so many people. And I think it's important to ask about some of the biggest challenges people with mental illness actually face. What are those things that are stopping them from getting out and saying that there is a problem?
I need help, yeah.
One of the challenges that people face is that there's sometimes a lack of support in their struggle. So that plays a role definitely, where they feel alone in that journey. Other thing is that we have a limitation of resources available. People don't know how to pursue help or know what is available to them. So it's very important for people to know what's available. The other thing is that sometimes people don't have an insight to their illness, and then that becomes a hindrance to them as well.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges we have, again, is the issue of stigma, which is actually quite a major problem that we have that makes people very secretive about their mental health struggle.
I just keep thinking about that point that you get to in your own self-evaluation, where you feel that those around you, the people that you love, especially your kids, are better off without you. And I think that to me is a line that I just can't wrap my head around. Now, I would imagine that someone who has, thankfully, the tools at your disposal that you do have would have helped you on your own journey. You yourself have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So what are some of the coping mechanisms that you've put in place in your own life to keep yourself in balance, if you will?
I'm very grateful for the fact that I have had the support that I have. I've lived with bipolar disorder for the past 21 years now. And what has helped me is that my parents pursued the appropriate help early on in my life. So I do have the support of a multidisciplinary team, which includes a psychologist and psychiatrist. And also, when it was necessary, I was supported by an occupational therapist. But the level of insight has been a journey for me, and being aware of my illness and triggers has been very important. But the support factor cannot be downplayed at all. It's very important, and that plays an integral role in my life.
Knowledge is indeed power, and also knowing that you're not alone, which is so powerful in itself too. I know that there may be some people watching our conversation, Doctor, contemplating a variety of different things. Maybe they actually like to get help, and maybe this conversation prompted it. But for anybody who is struggling at the moment, if you could send them a message, especially those who feel that they don't have the means to go and grab a therapist at 1,200 Rand an hour, people who don't want to burden their family with their mental issues, how would you like to address them now in their own space? Just those people who feel a bit locked in. What would you like to say to them?
I'd encourage them to not be ashamed to admit to struggle. Actually, admitting to struggle is one of the bravest things that you can actually do.
Amen.
So seeking help is very important. Like you said, you mentioned something very important about people who might not afford a psychiatrist or psychologist that want the help. And it's important to access resources that are free, such as the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. They are excellent in providing the care that's necessary for people who might not be able to afford it. And also our public health sector is usually something that discourages people. But there are psychiatrists in hospitals and in clinics who provide the care that's necessary within the public sector.
Oh, Doctor, thank you so much. You are living proof that this doesn't need to stand in your way of your calling, of what you should be doing with your life. So thank you so much for sharing your personal circumstances as well, and for just being there as this resource. I'm going to preach it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
Yes, you can go and get help from a psychologist or psychiatrist, but there are resources that are free, and they are there, and they have helped thousands of people, just like the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, who are amazing. So you can call their mental health line right now on 011 234 4837, or simply visit their website, sadag.org. The most important thing, speak to someone.